Foam clay is a lot more versatile than you might think, and it saved me when trying to make a pair of mini cosplay horns, so here's how to make them. The first time that I tried to make these mini cosplay horns didn't really go as planned, so I needed to find a better way to make them. If you haven't heard of foam clay before, it's a lightweight, moldable, air drying and non-toxic clay, which is brilliant for cosplay as it allows you to create small details, small props, or even different textures on different surfaces, and it's just so easy to work with. All you need to make these is foam clay, water, PVA glue, a headband, hot glue, and some sanding paper and paint. One disclaimer that I do need to make is that I wouldn't use purely foam clay to make larger horns, and I go into the details of why that would be at the end of this video in the tips section. So I decided to go for short goat style horns for an evil fae character that I was making. You can shape it and mold it in so many ways, so that's what I'm doing here, and to get it to form to my will. As we're working with it, we will want to dampen it. That's where the water comes in. Just be careful not to use too much, otherwise it will cause the foam to get way too soggy and pretty much disappear. Now I'm happy with the shape of the first horn, I'm pressing it into the headband to create an indent of the position I'd like it to sit in, and we can put it to one side for it to start to dry. Another thing that I will say is that this method doesn't really account for the fact that if you want to have a perfect matching set of horns. But in my opinion, horns are rarely identical in nature, and so it doesn't really bother me too much. That's my excuse anyway. Now we've got two horns, we need to leave them to dry out for at least 24 hours before we can add all the details to them. Using a biro, you can draw onto them the design of your choosing. I'm doing a swirling pattern that goes around the horn from the base to the tip. For this next part, I am actually going to use a Dremel. However, you can also use sandpaper to do the exact same effect, but I just like to use my Dremel for speed. If you're also going to use a Dremel, please make sure that you use eye protection and a respirator. If you don't have a Dremel, you can still use sandpaper for the same effect, as foam clay is really soft. If you are using a Dremel, make sure to go in with a light hand. To finesse the markings after using the Dremel, I'm using sandpaper to tidy up the lines. Make sure to sweep all of the dust off after you've finished, as we're now onto sealing and painting. Foam clay acts exactly the same as normal craft foam once it's fully dry, and that means that you're going to need to use a primer to seal it before painting. My preferred choice when it comes to priming props is to use PVA glue because it's cheap and it's non-toxic. You want to make sure you get into every nook and cranny with the PVA glue and then leave them to dry. Now they're fully dry, we can get into painting, my favourite part. I'm going for gold, but of course you can paint them whichever colour you like. After painting on your chosen colour, leaving that layer to dry, I'm then going to go back in with black wash to pick up the markings we have painstakingly put into them. The final step is to then glue them onto the headband with hot glue, and we're finished. But make sure before you wear them that the hot glue has cooled down. So as I mentioned earlier, using foam clay is great for smaller horns, but you will need a base to cover if you're going to use it for larger horns, such as cardboard, craft wire or foil, which are all brilliant options. So this is a bit of a sneak peek actually. These are the horns that I'm currently working on for my Mazora cosplay, and on the inside I used toilet roll. I then covered that in masking tape and then put the foam clay over the top to be able to create the details. An extra little tip that I have is that if you're planning on wearing these anywhere outside and there is a risk that it may get wet, is to seal your props. My preferred method is to use clear lacquer, which is essentially an auto used for cars. So you can get clear lacquer in either a matte or a gloss finish, and you might also want to think about what prop you're putting it onto. A little story time for you all is that I got caught in the rain once, the paint started to bleed, and it went everywhere, and I definitely don't wish to relive that experience again. So that's how I learnt. Always seal your props with something that will make them a little bit more waterproof. This is a very thin hairband, and unfortunately, I'm not joking when I say this, I broke them right before filming this video. So I've had to use good old sellotape to fix them just so that I could wear them. So they can be quite delicate. That's my extra tip of advice. Thank you so much for joining me on this little crafting journey. I'll see you in the next adventure, but until then, stay inspired and happy crafting. You have been warned. Sellotape? Oh, maybe I can glue them. Oh. Yes.